Hey, so welcome back to the podcast. It's Jason Suarez, your host, and today we have a special guest, Joana. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit to the audience?
Yes. Hi. Thanks for having me. My name is Joana. I'm Portuguese, and I've been doing this work for quite a while. It started with my own inner journey, which I can touch more upon later, and the desire in my heart to help women and just support them through this path really grew, and so I'm here to talk about that today.
Okay. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your work is and what your message and the path that you're trying to lead women through is?
Yeah, sure. So, my main message to women is to really self-resource and to come back to themselves instead of, I know many women seek outside of themselves to feel safe, to feel they belong, to feel they have a ground in this world. And so my main message is to first self-resource and learn how to trust deeply in herself.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, a relationship is needed with oneself. And after this relationship is built, so much more can come, and from a more grounded place instead of a place of grasping and survival.
Okay. Yeah. Well, what do you mean by that relationship with oneself? And what do you mean by building that inner trust and belief?
Mm-hmm. So what I mean with the relationship with oneself is really just make space and time to get to know who you are and get to know who you are as a person and all the perks that being a human takes, right? I think we learn so much to learn about the world, learn about other people, learn about history, learn about many things outside of us, which is beautiful and great, but there's such a richness inside of knowing ourselves. And so what I mean with the relationship is, like any relationship in the exterior, to make time to prioritize and to really sit with ourselves, to get to know who we are as a human being in this world and all the perks and amazingness that comes with that.
And why should women care about that? Why is it important for them? What do you think it'll change in their life, for example? Where will you see the positive, influences?
Yeah, like I think the biggest change that women can feel through this is one, higher confidence in themselves, and two, like from that confidence, much more groundedness in their space in the world. Like there's not fear of saying the wrong thing or occupying space or really like keeping themselves small. That's kind of ends when you have a relationship with who you are and you see, wow, like actually I deserve to be someone in this world and I deserve to have that space in this world. And so the inner trust comes as like this dough that really encompasses who you are and builds this bridge between the person you are externally and the person you are internally, so there's more wholeness. And through that wholeness, like you can really expand instead of like trying to survive because you don't trust what's here. You don't trust your own voice. You don't trust the direction you're feeling you want to go. You don't trust like your message. You don't trust the way you desire something, and so you limit yourself a lot through that. So building relationship is all about allowing that to come through and allowing yourself to listen to that and follow that. Yeah.
And how do we do that? Or not me, but the women listening to this, or how have you done it?
Yeah. So it's I always start with like keeping small promises to yourself. Like many times what I hear a lot is like many women desire to do something. For example, I want to be more, I want to make more space to be with myself. But what does that look like? Like many people think this is such an abstract concept, right? And it can be, but like really tackling into, okay, making more time to be with myself would be take 5 minutes every day to write my thoughts in the morning or in the evening. And so I always say, like, can you keep that promise to yourself? Can you really make that time and build that muscle inside of you of inner trust? Because inner trust is built through proof, and we give ourselves proof to really keeping those promises to ourselves. So yeah, I'm gonna journal every day for 5 minutes to really give space to this relationship I have, and naturally, like through that, inner trust is a byproduct. And so yeah.
Fascinating. Is there a process of like opening up and self-discovery mixed in there?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Of course. I feel inner trust is the second step after you learn that, okay, I'm not just a bunch of automatic reactions. I actually am a human being, and I can choose different things. And I am curious about, like, yeah, who I am and why do I react in certain ways? Where does this come from? And so, like, I think the first step of awareness is really diving into that. And then the second one, which can come very shortly after, is like, okay, so how do I trust this being that I am? How do I build this relationship so I can actually stop sabotaging? I can lean into what I desire to do, trust my intuition. How can I do those things, right? And so for what I see is that it comes as a second step for awareness after we are like, okay, I'm a being with thoughts and desires, and I see some patterns in my life that I'm not happy with. Then inner trust can be built after that awareness comes through.
So there's various steps to that journey, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, pretty cool. And how does this affect like relationships between them and other people? What's the transfer then from the relationship that they have with themselves and then the relationship they had with the world, for example, other people, other women, other men, for example? How does that expand?
Yeah, it expands massively because you cannot be with another if you don't know how to be with yourself.
Okay.
And that goes to everything, right? Like, you can try to be, you can please your way into being, you can perform to be loved, you can try to fit a mold. Like, there's many ways we can try, but trying is such a it's such a contrary thing to being. And so only when we have this deep awareness and relationship with who we are and this trust in ourselves, that allows us to show up more authentically and more peacefully to relationships with people and with the world in itself. We can come up being more of who we are, and instead of less because we think we need to fit in.
Okay. And then I was curious, why do you think that we're in need of this? Why do you think in the first place women, for example, don't have that inner trust of themselves? Where does that come from? Does it come from past relationships with people? Does it come from childhood trauma? Where do you think that stems from?
That's an amazing question. Yeah, I like that question a lot. It comes from two different sides. One is culturally and through society, like, and we can see this in a macro level, like society terms, and we can see this in the micro level, like family terms and generational trauma. I'll start by the macro one. So, like, in society, like, women never had a big stand. Like, I see what history has shown is, like, through the millennia of our years, women were there to serve and to raise kids, which was such a beautiful serving act. But the way our society evolved to encompass women more and to allow them to vote or to have a saying, those things are very recent. And I feel our minds can evolve with the concepts of the changing world, but there's things that need a lot of time to change truly, because they've been happening for a long time. And so I think we are standing in a place right now in terms of culture and society where women have a lot of freedom to do what they want, to be who they want to be, and to vote, to buy things. We don't need to ask our husbands to have money anymore or to open a bank account. This happened very recently if we look at all history. Like, we are free to do all of those things, but I feel many people still subconsciously don't have that access to that full freedom, because for a long time our ancestors didn't have that possibility. And so I feel there's a lot of patterns that come through generations that we are still comfortable with and uncomfortable with. Comfortable because they've been happening for a long time, so they feel what's familiar, and uncomfortable because we are in an era that allows us to do more, and we can feel the restriction of the history on our backs.
Yeah.
And then on the micro level, I would say through our families will obviously represent the macro. So in our families, we can also experience that through like the history of our ancestors, what happened to the women in our lineage, the relationships with men, the toxicity or the goodness of it, and how that impacts our lives today. This is all in our blood. Like, this was all passed through generations through us, and there's a history in that and a legacy in that. And so we are definitely affected by it, and women are definitely affected by it, by all the stories in the family of what a woman can, what a woman can't, what is possible, what is not possible, and how that impacts themselves and their self-image, right? And also the relationships around, because it can be positive things of like, oh, a woman can do this, and empowering women to do that through generations. But it can also be stories like women like don't need men, and just like you can do it alone, and things like that I find are also not truly helpful, and also create a bigger gap between partnering with men. So this is important, because building inner trust really allows you to look at these stories that sometimes are so out of our awareness, but we can discover them when we do this work, especially like subconscious patterning. We can really go to the root of it and find things about ourselves that we were never aware of, and that don't come from our lived experience, come from things in the past, from our families. And yeah, through that work, we can come back to a place of like, okay, what is true for me? What is authentic for me, not based on the projections of the past and the projections of society, but what I am in my core and what I want to bring to this world. So.
Okay, so you touched on like generational trauma there. You also touched on subconscious repatterning, right? Understanding that there is that generational passing, especially from like parents to daughters, for example, in this situation. How can women firstly identify it? Like, okay, I realize that I don't do certain thing due to the influence of parents or social pressure. How can they identify it and then change it in more like practical terms?
That's good.
How would you help them, for example? What would you tell them?
Yeah, like it's a long process. It's not something that can be done in a day, because there's so many years behind those choices, those actions, and those beliefs. And it's at the root of belief that we can change the action and the thought. And so that's why I work with subconscious patterning, repatterning. And so practically is really like, we start always with a pattern, and I focus a lot on love and relationships, because love and relationships is the biggest mirror of our lives, in my belief, or one of the biggest, I can say. And so like always seeing a pattern in relationships and what's going on that is not helpful or beneficial, or that is not contributing for good. And so looking at the pattern that is repeating and trying to understand like what is the root of that. So I always take women in a journey that is not through conversation, it's through the subconscious mind, which happens not in a logical sense, because it doesn't work with the logical parts of your brain, it works with other parts of your brain. And so really taking them on that deep journey into the subconscious mind, so they can, the answer can come naturally to them. It's not me that is telling them, look, this is what's happening to you. It's like I'm making space for them to discover that. And they naturally do, like, and that can be can be found, and then through a series of sessions, we can work on it and help dissolve it through different somatic practices with the body, but also subconsciously, and also like through different techniques I have to do that work. Yeah.
Okay, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So you did something recently called the inner garden, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about what that is. How did it go? And more.
Yeah, so the inner garden was a 4-day offering I did to really help women to find the inner garden inside of themselves, to really come back to that place inside. And it was a deep dive. It was a 4-day journey where each day they went on a little inner journey to find different parts of themselves, to identify, for example, like addictions that were stopping them to like be more authentic, things that they have using as a bypass to their authenticity and to just suit through their lives and not really own, like, because I work with the edge and the uncomfortable.
Okay.
So I use a lot of like, I help women to see in what parts of their lives they are bypassing themselves. And the inner garden was about that. It was like, where in your life are you like not owning your promises to yourself? Where in your life are you like betraying yourself? Where in your life are you bypassing an important conversation for you to feel more truthful with and in integrity with yourself? So the inner garden was like a journey where women could find those answers through the practices that I guide them into. And like through the journey, they really found very impactful things that they had. Yeah, they needed some time to process. And like, actually, like it was so, for some of my clients there, was like super impactful, the journey. And they made different choices after the journey because they went through it, and choices that would bring them closer to themselves and that inner trust. Because inner trust is about not betraying yourself. And when you are so committed and devoted to owning what is true to you and really expressing that to the world, for example, having an uncomfortable conversation, that is something that we often avoid. But when you do that, and when you really own that, you build inner trust with yourself, even if it's uncomfortable outside, or you leave someone a bit less happy with you, what you're owning, right? Like, it's all about that.
Right. Okay, interesting. So do you have something coming up that people could learn a little bit more about with you or work with you?
Yeah, I do.
Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, like I'm building a program. Okay, again. Yeah. So yeah, I have a program called Strive into Trust. It's like a beta. I don't know if I said it right.
In English, it's beta.
Beta. Okay.
Beta, yeah.
Okay, I'm ready. Yeah, so I have a new program, a beta program that I am launching. It's called Thrive into Trust, and it's a program to really work on this trust inside and to help women really come back fully into that trust with themselves, like to build that unshakable inner trust. What I want is to build the core inside of themselves so they can come back after this program and really trust themselves, so they can go into the world and really have a shorter time between what they know it's right to do and the action of doing it. So they don't lose time in overthinking and actually like trust so deeply in what their inner guidance is telling them to do and the steps to take. So my goal and desire is to really help them shorten the time between the message that they listen inside of themselves and the faithful action that they take to bring that forward. And that it decreases so much like overthinking, and when there's a gap, like there's also more space to question and not really like ferment that trust. And so like this program is really to build that muscle, and so they can come back so they can come back on the other side with that really strong, and they can trust themselves a lot and see the impact in their lives. Yeah.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so then touching on the part of relationships that you mentioned before, why do you think that like women have lost trust in relationships. I think we're talking more romantically, right?
Yeah.
Why has that happened, and what can we do about it?
Yeah, we can do a lot about it.
Okay, good. But why has that happened in the first place? I'm curious. Like, where do you think that mistrust and that? I think in today's society, I think both genders actually are quite cynical when it comes to relationships. It's kind of like, nah, we don't really want a relationship. And I wanted to hear like the women's perspective of that, at least from your point of view.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fragmentation happening throughout the years. It happened throughout the years, and yeah, we come to a time where we can really see that, right? Like today, people don't want to commit, are not interested in having a relationship, see that as a lot of work, and at the same time, it's something that we naturally long for. We long for partnership. We long for building something with other humans, either romantically or not. We long for connection and community. And I find through romantic relationships, a lot of that can be found and built. And a lot of that can be also healed. And what I see is that this decrease in desiring that or investing in that, it has come through all of what I've spoken before. Like I feel we are in a fragmented society, a lot of things pulling our attention, a lot of fast-track things. We are often used to instant gratification, to things coming our way very fast, and relationships are not built in that way. Relationships are built with time, with space, like the relationship with yourself, the same, a relationship with another, and with a lot of patience and trial and error. And so, yeah, today people seek that gratification and that fastness. And when something is a little bit hard, they pull away because it feels to them hard, right? And so I feel the distrust, though, came from what I was speaking about on society and generational trauma and us growing up with people that are probably not ready to raise kids or didn't have all the tools that they could have to really help us, at least emotionally. I think a lot of parents provided financially, but emotionally there's a lot of a gap. And I see in many clients that there's always a common point and thread of where they come from in their families and how, for example, the relationship with their father shaped their vision of relationships, or the relationship or their perception of the relationship of their parents shaped their vision of relationships, and how they're like, oh, I don't want that. The thing is, like, people don't know that another thing is possible, that something healthier is possible and actually powerful, and that helps you grow. And so, yeah.
Okay, so then how do we work through that, and what's the process of healing like? Which you mentioned before.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a long process, but the process of healing and how we work through that. We work through that individually with ourselves and with the stories that we have collected as children and the stories we have collected from movies, from what we've been fed in the outside world that we took as truth. And we also work with the other. We work with the other person we are in a relationship with. And what can be done is really like creating space for what is uncomfortable, and also creating space for what leads us. Because many times we are led by these stories of like, what is a relationship, or what we should expect from a man, on what we should expect from a woman. And it's really sitting with that. An example I can give is of a story. For example, I see a common thread of many women feeling like a burden. They feel like a burden, and so this impacts their lives a lot in terms of like they cannot ask for help. And at the same time, the other extreme of that is that they are hoping to be saved in a relationship. But they cannot receive, they cannot accept to be helped. And so there's two extremes in this coin, which is like they feel like a burden in one side massively, and so they don't accept help, they don't ask for help, they avoid it, and they overcompensate that by performing for love. So serving, wanting to be loved by what they do for others and to others. And also subconsciously at the same time, what's playing out is like their deep desire to be saved by a man. So when they come into a relationship, they come into a space of like, I need this other person to save me from myself and from my life. And at the same time, I resent them if they don't, and I resent myself for not being able to like enjoy what is in the relationship. So there's a lot of things happening that are not being communicated and that are sabotaging and harming the connection. And the work that I do is really helping them to dissolve this. And that's what I do more in one-on-one coaching with women. Like I work through their relationships, and yeah, I help them dissolve and go through these patterns and really help them, come back to the truth of what is and not the stories and pain. And inner trust is like a balm to that, because when you see that you are the only person that can truly save yourself, because you are the one that live your story, you are the one that went through your pain, and so you are the one that has the key to actually help yourself with helps of others, but to actually hold your own hand and be like, I'm here and I can help you through this. If another person does that for us, it has a limit. But when we do that for ourselves, it's everlasting, impact, and can transform much more.
That's actually kind of nice. Fascinating. I never understood that. That's why it's interesting to ask you. And that feeling of a burden, and women feeling like sometimes they change themselves for the men. And then they hate themselves for it. So like, I'm also curious, as obviously a male here, I was like, so then what's our role? How can we facilitate that? Can we? Is there something we can do on our side? For example, that women feel like, well, if my partner did such and such, it would make me feel more reassured. Understanding, of course, that they should build that inner trust on their own, but like from the other side, how can we help that? How can we encourage it?
A lot can be done as well. Like I love this sentence of, our trauma was built in relationships, so our healing is also found in relationships. And I believe that so much. I don't see it as the main source, but I see it as a big source of it. And so I find that it's by men working on themselves and actually looking at their own things and their own story and their own behaviors and patterns that's already helping. Because again, the more you know yourself, the more you can let yourself be known. And so when each person does the work individually and comes forward with that work done, or with that work ongoing, like the possibilities of a partnership instead of like a competition or a hate relationship, because in a lot of couples it can start as love and then people turn their backs to each other. So a way that partners keep being partners is by each individual working on themselves and their own inner things and bringing that forward in the partnership. How men could more practically help women through this would be really like, I think one of the main things is not trying to fix anything. Men love to solve problems, and this is such a beautiful characteristic of them. I find that amazing, and it's so helpful in many ways. But I find for human nature, like the woman's nature is a bit different. When we have a problem, we desire more than anything to be held, and that there's space made to this problem to have, to have a room to be alive in. And when I know for many of my clients, and myself included, when a man steps forward to solve that, before he has the space to hold it and actually be with us in it, like be in the mud with us, sometimes the fixing of the problem comes just by having someone else there with us. sometimes it's not even about the problem, it's about us feeling less alone in it. And so when a man learns how to be how he can be comfortable in making space and time and just like holding our hands through that, that is already enough. Because sometimes a man, like many times a man tries to fix because he is uncomfortable with our emotionality. So when a man learns to be comfortable with the bigness of emotions and the waves, when he learns to be the harbor, to hold those waves, then the waves come into peace naturally. There's nothing that needs to be done other than like someone there with their presence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I was saying on that topic of like men and women in a relationship, I was curious like why there seems to be so much animosity, you know, of both genders against each other. Obviously, in this topic, I was wondering like, is there like some kind of not hate, but like I don't know if it's mistrust, and that's what I'm trying to understand. That like, what is it that women feel towards men when it comes to, for example, relationships or things in general? Like quite a common term that we have today is like the idea. I know this is more edgy, but like the topic of, oh, like I hate men, and like, well, it seems pretty important to me. Like that's a pretty big blockage in a relationship. Like, what are we supposed to do with that? You know, or what are women supposed to do with that sentiment in themselves, and how that damages relationships in a sense?
Yeah. I think that's definitely one of the biggest gaps nowadays, because that separates us so much, right? Like when there's hate, there's a lot of separation.
But why is it? Is it just because men are men, or the things that certain men do? Then, or I also hear this common thing of like the patriarchy, and so they have like this certain image of that we are trying to limit them. And for the average person living their own life, you know, like a normal male or me, for example, it's kind of just like, well, I'm trying to make it through life too. Like, I didn't necessarily do anything to you to limit you, yet I meet someone or interact with somebody, and within your first contact, you're kind of dealt this card of like, oh, I hate men. So like, okay, well, what do I do with this now? You know. So I wanted to bring that topic here. I know it's a bit more sensitive, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, I think it impacts both sides, right? Like as you're saying, like men are impacted by it wrongly, and then women are impacted by it wrongly. And there's so much we can do together, right? In cooperation and in partnership, and there's so little we can do separated. No, it's more like you ask about the animosity, and what I wanted to say is that there's this history of women really not feeling confident and comfortable about expressing their truth, and there has been so much repercussion of that happening to women. So, for example, women saying no, or like women being like, yeah, like in old times, for example, a husband, if he wanted to have something for a woman couldn't say no. So she was under that umbrella of like, I need to please, and I need to, I need to lower my needs so I can meet the needs of this other person, this man. And I think this impacted a lot the way women would then see and relate to men, because it would create a lot of resentment towards themselves and the ability of them to own what they needed, and towards the men and the ability to say no and be respected in that. So I feel a lot of the distrust and the hate comes from that, because a lot of women grew up in those situations, and then there's a generalization of like, I don't trust any other men because I had these experiences with this particular man. And so I think the animosity comes from there, from that place of hurt. Yeah.
So is that where you're saying it all stems from? I don't know, because that's what I'm curious. I'm like, okay, when a woman says that or puts out, for example, publicly out for people to see, it's like, okay, well, what do I do with this information? Like, how do I, if I want to develop a relationship with that person, it's kind of like, as a man, it's like, whoa, you know, that's a pretty big brain block. It's like, well, what do I do with this information? Am I supposed to continue showing interest? Am I supposed to continue trying to build a relationship, or do I take this, how do we deal with that? And I also would guess that it's not a positive influence on the women's perspective of the relationship either. Because if that's the baseline, then anything that we do wrong, which I'm sure we will do plenty wrong, everybody does wrong things in a relationship, or make mistakes, it will resort to that baseline of, oh, well, he's just a man and we hate men, and that doesn't make us feel like safe, you understand? So maybe that's wrong to bring into a topic of women, but I was just curious about that. I don't know if you have anything more you would want to say on the topic, but...
Yeah, of course. I think definitely impacts both sides massively in a very negative way. I think definitely is so harmful for men to receive that, because like we cannot generalize just because someone hurt us that everyone that is like this person is like that. Just because a man hurted me in the past, I cannot say all men are terrible and the same and I hate men. Like, that's a pretty big standard, and it's a standard that divides, and a standard that, I think for a man to hear that would be so hurtful in many ways. And I don't think a man can do anything about it other than just being like, okay, this is information, and she's telling me from the beginning that she's not open to trust, because when we hate, it's because we don't trust, because we see the other as wrong and we are not really comfortable with connecting with that. And so, I think that's all.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. So we talked about this in our personal conversations before the podcast and everything. You also talked, along with all this perspective, you also talked about the part of women embracing being feminine. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I work with polarity as well, which is the concept that says that inside of us humans, individually, we have masculine traits and feminine traits. And this is not based on, it's based on hormones. Like, we have certain hormones inside of our bodies, and some are more like, can represent more feminine traits and others masculine traits. And so I think today's society being so focused on, especially the feminist movement, or empowering independent women, let's become like men and be the boss and wear suits, and not that there's anything wrong in that, but that's the standard for a woman's life. I think that limits us a lot if that's the only thing we are aiming for, and puts us more into a masculine kind of like way of living, because we biologically, we are different, right? Like, so men have a 24-hour clock hormonally. The hormones rise in the morning and then they lower in the end of the day, while women have a cycle which is 28 days and the hormones literally do this. So there's a lot of fluctuation, and when we try to take what we are and put that into a masculine hormone cycle, we end up doing a disservice to ourselves and to our nature. So when I say to be more feminine is to connect more with our cycle, the cyclas, like the, I don't know this word. How do you say? The cyclicity, like you have a cycle. Cyclically.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's being cyclical.
Yeah. To connect more. Okay, maybe wait for this sound.
Yeah.
Okay. To connect more with the cyclical nature of our being. So being more feminine is to just embrace the different seasons and phases that we live through, and try to create a life that works with that instead of against that. On the tangent, like, a lot of burnouts in women come from not living aligned with that cycle and just trying to be productive 24/7 and not really owning like their nature that they are, right? It's trying to bypass what they are hormonally, biologically, and trying to fit into something else. And that's how I see like feminism can be very damaging and impactful negatively on a woman's life. And that's why I promote like femininity and embodying more the feminine side, because I feel in today's world, women are really naturally brought to be more masculine, to create structure, to create a life, to be really on this masculine way of living. And I really want to encourage them to connect more with their feminine side, to their natural side, because that will also benefit them much more. And that's part of them is where the superpowers of being themselves lie.
So, what does that look like? I'm curious. Like, so for example, you being an entrepreneur, I would say, and there's other women out there trying to do their own thing. And they're listening to what you just said, and they're like, well, what does that imply? Does that mean I don't work one day? Like, what are the practical implications of that?
Yeah, like different implications. Yeah. It's more like working with your energy levels, because our hormones fluctuate. It's about like how when you know yourself and when you know your cycle and how you are in the different weeks of the month, you can also use that to your advantage. So there's a period where you are more, as a woman, you are more productive because you have more testosterone in your body. And so you can use that to your advantage and do a lot of productive work there, like finish a lot of to-do lists, be really focused, and just finish things up. And there's other phases where you need to rest. And in those phases, maybe the good thing would be to do low effort work that doesn't imply to be focused, work that is more about nourishing, work that is more like about taking care of your body and moving your body, and not really about producing and showing results in that way. So it can even be like, okay, in this week I'll take time off to just rest more or to drink more water. Just a simple small thing can really honor the phase a woman is in and reconnect them back to their original nature and back to their femininity. And so,
Interesting. And so you talked about that clashing with feminism, and I'm curious, like, why is that the case?
Yeah, it can be the case. I think in my perspective, feminism is allowing women to choose whatever they want. Either is to be the CEO of a company or a mother taking care of their kids at home, right? It's the ability to choose. I think how I see it in many people's perspectives today, they see, okay, if you stay at home and take care of your kids, you failed as a woman because you're not, you're not doing big things in the world. And so I can see there's sometimes this toxicity about like this toxicity and this push into being a strong, independent woman that doesn't rely on anyone, and that's when you made it. And I think that's so negative, in my opinion, and can promote so much this thing that I was saying of being productive and trying to conquer something, trying to prove yourself, trying to like show yourself to the world, and that can come and be connected with what we talked before about proving and trying to assert and being loved through what you do and perform. And that can create so much burnout in a woman's life. And so the feminism can be counterproductive to you as a woman to find your original nature and really own and know yourself, and really can feed into the idea of, okay, I need to do more to be this strong, independent woman ideal that has been sold to me.
And so how would someone identify the difference or what they should be doing then? Like, how would the average person say, look, I'm struggling with this, I'm not sure whether I should be pushing 100% on my career or enjoying life or traveling or focusing on relationships? How can they do that? How can they find out? Obviously it goes through self-awareness and the processes that you talked about before, opening space and building inner trust. But for people who are struggling with that, especially women in this case, what can they do? And how do they deal with all that outside noise? Like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this, or I'm this age, and so I should be working whatever to pursue this goal, even though it's not my goal. How would you help them deal with that, or what is your thought process on that?
That's why like this work of inner trust is so important, because when you learn to trust yourself versus the external world, those voices start to lower in your mind. And it doesn't mean that it wouldn't impact them still, but it would decrease a lot. And so you don't feel like a puppet being torn to different sides. And yeah, like how they can identify that is really like, if there is a big pattern happening and a lot of suffering happening in a particular time, and yeah, to the point that they feel like, oh my God, I'm so lost, right? Like I don't know what to do. I feel I don't have a direction at all. I feel that's such a huge first sign of what might be going on and how might they be depleted from their lives. Because a woman that is connected with her truth, that is connected with her integrity, that is connected with her purpose and vision in the world, that doesn't come from prove and for trying to fill a gap inside of them, but actually through overflow, is a well-nourished woman. It's not a woman that has, doesn't mean that she doesn't have bad days. That is certainly not the case. That happens to everyone. But I think when a woman is really far off from her nature, it will be so loud and apparent in her life. Like things will feel very off, and she will feel very desensitized to what is happening, to certain things that are happening that don't feel like her at all. And that is such a big sign of disconnection and what might be going on in the background.
Okay, fascinating. All right. And this other question like sort of popped up in my mind, which is obviously in doing this podcast, I've always been focused on my personal growth. I'm a man. I understand my struggles and men's struggles. And I know this is a little bit off topic, but what do you think women's struggles are? You know, it could be within this perspective, but also outside. Like, what are things that you guys deal with in the sense that, like, okay, every day, these are the things that I struggle with as a woman, just to learn, because I want to know.
Yeah, sure. I think it can be similar to men. I don't know, but I think there's a lot of like insecurity about ourselves, insecurity about like our voice in the world, about asserting like our space in the world, taking up space. I can see that as a big problem for a lot of women. So they don't speak, they don't tell, they don't share things. They are super scared of saying the wrong thing. They think about the same sentence 100 times before they are able to fully express that. Yeah, and so going through life and through the world can be, there's a lot of tendencies in women to people please, to perform, to just like mold themselves to what the other person wants, to be a chameleon. And I see that again and again and again. This is so cultural and not so individual. So I think women struggle daily with those things, with really feeling like, that the gap between what someone else wants me to be and what I want to be, and following what the other person wants, because we don't feel safe in owning what we want. And I think this is one of the biggest struggles women face, truly, being a chameleon to other people's desires.
Do you think if they weren't, it would create a lot of problems in relationships with other people? Which is why they're a chameleon, because they believe that it would create strife in a relationship, right?
Of course. Yeah, it would.
I guess that's one of the difficulties and where some of the frustration comes in, because maybe they feel like when they try to be less and less that, they express it, and then there's backlash from the male side, like, oh, I'm not used to this, whether you talk about it culturally or etc. And then it creates strife, and then somebody has to give, maybe the woman gives or the man gives, and then that creates maybe the animosity that we were talking about, where like the woman's like, oh, I feel like if I open up, if I'm true to myself, if I don't try to people please, well, that creates a problem in my romantic relationship or my platonic relationship or with my parents, etc. I don't know.
Definitely.
Curious.
Like, definitely. That's on point. Because, I really like this saying of like, what you show first when you meet someone is the imprint that stays. So women often come into contact, either in romantic relationships or in any relationship, showing the best of themselves and trying to please, to be chosen. And that's another root of this all is like, oh, I want to be chosen so much that I can do and mold myself so the other person chooses me, so I please and I am pleased by. And so when then after a few months, a few weeks, women are like, actually, like, that's not who I am, and it doesn't feel good to do this. But the other person already has the standard of what you showed, of what the women showed that she is. And so when you try to move away from that standard, obviously it creates backlash and creates a lot of structural disturbance. But it's good, it's not bad. If the other person is willing to grow and just, yeah, if there's the willingness to sit down and be like, oh, actually, I entered this space trying to please you because I liked you so much that I wanted you to like me back. And if there is a space of truth, I think anything is possible. The thing is, sometimes it's so uncomfortable that people cannot come to that space of vulnerability and truth. And that's also how I help women with. This is like really coming back to, yeah, the problem is not the clash that is happening, is how you deal with it. The problem is not that things are coming up, is how you really make space for them and work through them together, right? And so you have a point, and definitely is so true. And I think women definitely, when they don't have this awareness, they come back to, okay, I need to please, and I need to save this, I need to be less of me. And that's where the resentment then builds up towards themselves and others, towards their inner trust, because they don't trust they can really show who they are, and they keep betraying themselves to keep others in their lives, which is not positive and helpful for anyone. And so, yeah, it definitely goes, there's a lot of connected dots here that create a big story of what's happening right now.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, I was curious, going forward, what would you hope changes? What would you like to see even in your personal life, or for you, or in general? Like, what do you hope that the future brings?
Yeah, I think the future is already bringing. I feel, I know a lot of amazing men. Thankfully, like, I'm surrounded with men that keep repatterning my own perceptions of men that I've created throughout my life. Around my stories, around like my fears. And so I think men are stepping up, because many women started to step up over the years. There's a new standard. And so I feel many men are stepping up and also doing the work. And so my hope for the future is that this keeps going, because the goal is to create healthier societies, and the impact of what we do today and the choices we take today of doing this work and really diving deep into ourselves, it doesn't affect just us. It's not a selfish thing. It gives us a better life and better connections, but then the impact and the legacy is through generations. And my hope is that generations are impacted towards the future, and that children can grow up in healthier environments. That's my hope.
Okay, lovely. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Okay, so now's the part where we dive into some additional questions, normally reserved for the end of the podcast. Off the bat, I was curious, like, what do you read? What's your, what are the books that you consume?
Yeah.
Or if you don't, none.
No, I do read. I read a lot. I read a lot of geeky things about psychology. So yeah, like about trauma and about like parts work, but also I like to read about polarity and relationships. Like a really good book that I've recently read that I think it's really accessible for a lot of people is IFS, so Internal Family Systems. How to do parts work, like how to work with yourself and the different parts inside of you. And it's a really helpful book that I really enjoy reading, but very technical. So, yeah.
Okay, interesting. What's the best, one of the better books that you've read that, let's say, what is a book that influenced you a lot? Maybe a book that's changed the direction of your journey or your growth as a person.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's many, but you can name various if you want. I'm totally open to that.
Yeah, I would say two. The first one is a book I read when I was 12 years old that was about the Holocaust and a child surviving the Holocaust through hiding herself in different attics. It's not Anne Frank, it's another one. And this book changed completely my world, because it gave me such a deeper perspective of the human condition and human suffering. And yeah, as a 12-year-old, it really like cracked my heart open and changed me forever. Like to even wanting to do this work that I'm doing today and helping people. It all stems from wanting to help people through their suffering. And yeah, that book marked me a lot. And then, yeah, I would say like The Alchemist also marked me a lot. It's a very powerful book that's helped me to surrender more to the magic of life. Yeah.
Beautiful. And normally a question that comes around on this podcast is like philosophy for life. So I'm always curious like what people's philosophy for life is. What are your core goals that like influence your decision-making processes to direct your life in a certain way? That's the way I think about it. I don't know.
Cool. Yeah, so like my main values is to be in integrity and truth. And so I really, that's my North Star to move through life. So when things go bad and when things don't go my way, I really hold on to that. Like, how can I bring more of that? And alongside that is do good to others. I think that's what I want the most for my life. I think it's also part of what my purpose in life is. I rejoice so much by helping other people and serving others from a space of overflow, not because, it can have the little shadow of overgiving to be loved, but when you heal that, like there's, at least for me, when I heal that, there's so much joy in giving and being able to provide love and safety to people. And so, when things don't go right, I really try to come back to, okay, how can I give to myself? How can I bring truth to myself? Instead of like maybe the sabotaging thoughts, how can I bring truth? And how can I give that back to others? How can I make this circulate so there is more good in the world and people are touched by that? Yeah.
All right, amazing.
Thank you.
And we have a question from our last guest on the podcast. You're free to think about it a little bit before you respond. And his question was, does life have meaning? I was curious what your response to that would be.
That's a really good question. I think life has meaning, but way beyond our understanding. I think our minds are too limited to understand that. And at the same time, in a parallel line, I think life has meaning to each of us individually. It has the meaning we give it to. Yeah, the meaning we choose to give to life, that can be changing and transforming throughout the different chapters of our existence. But I think the big meaning of life is something we cannot comprehend rationally.
Okay, all right. And what is a question you'd like to leave for the next guest?
Yeah. What is an everyday action you can do that will impact the world? The smallest thing you could think of, but that could impact the world.
All right. Well, I'll ask them that on the next episode. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your thoughts and being here. It was genuinely very, very fun. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.